Game mechanics are the fundamental rules of a game. Press X to jump, press a trigger to shoot. But it's not just controls. You can't walk through this door until you meet the requirements. If you get hit, you take damage. Much like the rules of the world, the mechanics of a game are infallible. Rules set by the developer that cannot be broken. Except, they can be twisted. As is with real life, we have these set rules, and we use those rules to create new things. And games are just like this, but on a compressed and smaller scale. When a developer creates a game, they'll have very specific uses for the mechanics of that game in mind when designing them. However, sometimes these mechanics and rules can mix into an unexpected result when combined. And while a developer and their team will try their best to keep these unintended uses out of the game, in the end, a game can only be playtested by so many people, even when it comes to AAA game companies. Thus, when your community of thousands, potentially millions of people get their hands on it, you just know that for a fact they're going to find some things that even you as a creator might have never known about.
Reality Stone! Let's go!
Now, as a developer in the modern day, you can have two responses to this. You can A, patch it out if it's like some game-breaking stuff like bugs that softlock you or destroy your immersion. These would easily fall into this category. Or you can B, leave it as is. But why might you want to do that? Isn't this an impurity, a blemish on your perfect creation? Well, what if the players find that unintended use of a mechanic to not only be useful, but also very, very fun? This is how legends are born. This is how games take themselves from being great or even average to incredible. Players who love a game so much, they're willing to dive into a game and find new ways to use mechanics to do things the developers may have never even thought about. This is aptly called tech. And today, I want to run you through some of my favorites and most inspiring times tech has revolutionized the game and its community. To do this, we should first talk about the granddaddy of tech. Quake was released in 1996, way before you could ever even think of patching a game. And boy, does Quake have some tech. This is Quake being played normally. And this is Quake being played with advanced tech. This tech in particular is called bunny hopping. A very cute little name, but I think if bunnies went this fast in real life, we'd all be as scared of bunnies as Subaru is. Bunny hopping comes from the inbuilt mechanics of running and jumping in the Quake engine. You see, when you run in a game like Quake, you actually go faster running to the side than you do in a straight line. This is called strafing. Players also notice that when you jump, you don't lose momentum and will carry that speed through the jump. However, even if you string jumps together, when you hit the ground, you'll always lose a little bit of speed. So, the players figured out that by combining jumping and strafing, you can maintain and even gain speed over time by offsetting the time lost from hitting the ground with strafing in the air, thus creating bunny hopping. As after enough hops, you would start to go at light speed. No, faster than that. Maybe even
Ludicrous speed!
This tech was so influential, despite developers trying their best to gut the tech through the years in newer games. It still managed to find its way through, even to the modern day. I think my and many others' favourite usage of the tech is Foon's montage in Counter-Strike Source. When he uses the tech to get to places no one thinks you should be able to get to, and it speeds you just shouldn't, getting himself accused of scripting multiple times. Bunny hopping allowed players to express themselves in their gameplay even more than the game was intended to, which is a theme we'll see pop up more in this video, but it doesn't mean that it's the only good thing about tech. Sometimes tech is so integral to the gameplay that it's required to compete, and the most famous example of this is none other than one of the most important games in history. Mario 64 is one of, if not the most famous game for the pastime known as speedrunning. The act of going
Ludicrous speed.
through a game to beat it as fast as you can. And as you might have guessed, to do this will more often than not involve tech that you will need if you want to climb the leaderboards. And while a lot of games you could compete in and not use the specific tech and have your own kind of fun, Mario 64's 16-star run did not exist without the creation of the backwards long jump. The backwards long jump, otherwise known as the BLJ, is an infamous technique in the world of speedrunning. It's a technique that broke the world of Mario 64 speedrunning wide open. When the game first released, people rightly assumed that you needed to get at least 70 stars to beat the game, as the staircase at the end of the game would teleport you back unless you had them, thus creating the endless staircase. However, in an old issue of the Latin America version of Club Nintendo, two brothers submitted a piece that would explain it was possible to get past that staircase by using Mario's long jump and holding backwards while repeatedly inputting that jump with A. You could then get past the barrier to the final level. However, due to it being in a magazine and low use of the internet, it wouldn't be truly discovered until later, where the technique would be shown for the first time on video in the classic old GameFAQs message board. And once unleashed into the world, the community would use it to break through doors and all other kinds of monstrosities. Nowadays, using this and a glitch using this rabbit called Mips, you can beat the game in just 16 stars. And this tech, discovered by the community, has become a must-have requirement if you want to partake in Mario 64 16-star speedruns. God, what's a mouth? And much like bunny hopping, the devs gutted it in later releases. Devs don't seem to be too big of a fan of people using their rules in unsanctioned ways. But this wouldn't stop the Mario 64 community, as they simply said, no, and kept playing on the older version, which allowed them to do the tech that they find cool. And I think that's just so sick. Man, if only there was another game where the devs didn't like its tech and decided to remove it in later versions of the game. But the community stuck with it, despite, I'm going to talk about Melee.
Super Smash Brothers Melee!
A common misconception about Melee is that the tech is actually a glitch. And while yes, I could sit here and debate all day about what a glitch is and if BLJs are glitches and who knows what, the point is, the developers actually knew about Melee's quirks before they released the game. But Chaler, doesn't that defeat what you said earlier in the— Shut up, we'll get there. Since this video is different to my regular content, let me explain for those of you who may not be as familiar exactly what I mean. You see, in Melee, momentum is carried through everything you do, due to the mechanics of the game. Your momentum in a run carries through to a jump, and so forth. And there's a mechanic in the game that lets you dodge in the air in a direction. If you do this into the ground, you're able to slide around. This became called a wave dash, and helped turn Melee from a regular speed platform fighter into a
Ludicrous speed.
platform fighter. But as I said, the devs knew it existed, so doesn't this just make it a mechanic of the game? Well, yes and no. You see, it's all about intention. While the devs may have known it was something that was possible, what they failed to realize was its ramifications. What they thought was just a silly consequence of their physics engine actually has become a core piece of tech in their game that allows you to get on stage faster, get on platforms faster, move around with certain characters at light speed, and more. It's also something that has defined Melee as a game, and much like bunny hopping, has carried through into other games that have included it with pure intention and also included tutorials on how to do it. Yet, the devs of Melee disliked the ramifications a technique like wave dashing had to their view of the game, and thus removed it from all future iterations of the game. Yes, I know it's an ultimate, but it doesn't work properly though, so shut up. Man, we really are beginning to see a pattern here, aren't we? Well, let's talk about a cool piece of tech that the devs don't hate. And it's just a beautiful consequence of the way the world works. Tell me, if you had a body that wouldn't get blown to smithereens by an explosion happening right next to you, and you wouldn't die, what do you think might happen to you? That's right, you would soar through the skies like a maybe not so beautiful bird. So if a video game is designed to have physics that resemble real life, but also you have that body, were to include a rocket launcher in its game, what do you think might happen? Rocket jumping is simple. You jump, and then you shoot a rocket at your feet, and boom, you go flying. This technique, while in many games, originated in, that's right, Quake. The developers knew about the knockback effect you get from a rocket, but deemed nobody would do it, because it would mean killing yourself. However, what they failed to realize was that when you jump, you can actually almost entirely negate the damage you'd receive from that rocket, allowing you to fly throughout the levels and reach places you maybe shouldn't be able to. Rocket jumping is very similar to wave dashing, in that while you could play without it, it adds that extra dimension of skill expression into your gameplay that you wouldn't get otherwise, without also being entirely broken in a multiplayer setting. If you want to stunt on your opponents by flying over their head and shooting them mid-air, you can, but you aren't required to by any means. If you want to combine it with bunny hopping and go
Ludicrous speed.
you can. However, this time the devs of the game embraced the mechanic and didn't remove the capability to rocket jump in later installments. And in fact, actually designed elements of the game such that rocket jumping is the best way to get certain items, or even had bots use the technique against you. I could spend hours going over all different kinds of tech in this video. It's not just limited to movement, because while I love movement tech, there's all different kinds of tech in all different genres. And yet, it feels completely random as to whether a developer decides whether to patch out a piece of tech. It doesn't seem to necessarily be based on how much the community likes it. Sometimes it just seems to be that the devs don't like that you aren't playing like you're supposed to. You're thinking outside of the box that they created, and instead you must conform to what their vision of their creation is, and anything else is not allowed. But honestly, isn't that what's so cool about tech? It's like an invention in real life, like learning a new skill. It gives the game life and adaptability, taking it off the rails that it was intended to be on, and allowing the game to evolve with the people who play it. And sure, what the game ends up being might not be what you originally intended, but that doesn't mean that they never experienced what you wanted, and new people will experience that in the future. But once they have, if they care enough, they may go down this path of invention. So maybe if you're a developer, maybe don't be so hasty to patch out that glitch, and instead give control to the people that now inhabit this world you've created. Because sure, it's your game, but it's our tech.